Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar series, Quiz the WIz. Today, at the request of many of our clients, we will be reintroducing a webinar series that many have enjoyed in the past. This event presents an opportunity for you, the attendees, to ask our expert panelists some of the most pressing questions, and it's their goal to help you envision a solution. Just a few housekeeping notes before we begin. We are recording today's session, and everyone who is registered will get an email with the link to the on-demand version. This session will run for a total of about 30 minutes, which includes questions and answers at the very end. Please note that all of the questions that we're presenting today were taken in advance. Therefore, some of the responses may be specific to the customers who submitted them. We will, of course, try to respond in general where possible for anyone having other solutions that might be relevant in the discussion. For the presenters, I may pose one or two relevant questions during the presentation as they come up, but these are obviously going to be limited to the subject of the discussion. For the most part, if the attendees have any questions throughout the webinar, please feel free to submit them through the Q&A panel on your GoToWebinar console, and we will address them towards the end of the presentation. Lastly, if for some reason we don't have time to address all of your questions in today's live event, please be assured that we will follow up with you directly. My name is Bill Bruton. I am account executive at SHEA Global. I've been with SHEA for about 6 months, but I have about 10 years experience helping clients find value from their digital transformation. I'm certain you'll enjoy the event we have lined up today. I'll be your host for today's Quiz the WIz. As part of my hosting duties, I'll now introduce you to today's panelists. Before we get there, I'll start with the company. Our team has many years of experience helping our clients and customers in multiple industries. We are an essential service according to the definitions of the province of Ontario. We have and will continue to stay open to service our clients as we're a global provider of ERP, CP, CRM, and business intelligence solutions. As well as demand-driven technologies. Our solutions are focused on transforming supply chains. SHEA Global supports organizations in 25 countries and offices in Canada, the United States, UK, India, and the Philippines. And of course, our business vision is that we challenge our customers to look beyond the status quo to make their business better. And at SHEA Global, our passion is guiding our customers to achieve business excellence. We believe every business has a potential for excellence. And now I'd like to introduce you to the Quiz the WIz panel. Firstly, I'd like to introduce one of our executive leaders, Tracy Crane. Tracy is the Chief Operations Officer at SHEA Global. She has over 30 years of experience building high-performance teams to deliver excellent customer service. Today, Tracy will also be participating as one of our panelists. Josh Fraser is our second panelist. Josh has been with SHEA Global Projects Delivery Team since 2014. Josh is an experienced IT professional with over 10 years of progressive experience supporting large-scale, complex Microsoft environments, both on-premise and in the cloud. Next is Grantley Smith. Grantley is a senior solution architect at SHEA Global. He has over 25 years of experience with a variety of technologies. Grantley's experience and expertise is delivering high-value custom solutions for clients with complex requirements over a variety of industries. Last but certainly not least is Roger Fleury. Roger is one of our UK practice leads. He has over 30 years experience implementing ERP systems with a current focus on Microsoft Dynamics and demand-driven supply chain solutions. Are you gentlemen and ladies ready for Quiz the WIz?
What happens if we say no?
It's too late now.
Just Just hold up your sign that says help.
Okay, so first question. What are the best practices for bank reconciliation? This question comes from one of our customers, I believe Exos. Grantley, would you like to take this one?
Sure. There are a number of best practices for bank reconciliation. The first one obviously being keep it up to date. Most of the applications that we support, and we support a number of different ERP applications, have a bank reconciliation module or function within them. And those functions typically allow you to update the bank rec on with whatever frequency you like, to be honest, daily, weekly, but not actually commit the reconciliation to the system. So first best practice, keep it up to date as best you can do. Second best practice would be to look at the possibility of getting an electronic feed from your bank. Most of the banks offer a download that would be similar to a manual bank statement, and that download in most cases can be imported into the ERP application and used to electronically match where it can do as much as possible, leaving you with just the balance of transactions to tie up. There are some different best practices from application to application around how to best enter your transactions so that they match with what's coming from your bank in terms of IDs, numbering systems, etc. But that varies from system to system, and we can help with that. Likewise, most of the banks have their own format for that download, and those formats vary from bank to bank and even based on the type of account that you have with the bank. So there's usually some mapping involved in that as well, but there are a lot of efficiencies that can be gained from doing that electronically. Specifically, this question, I know where it came from. It came from one of our Business Central customers. And so if you're on Business Central, there is a window for bank reconciliations in Business Central, and you can check off transactions with whatever frequency you want to. And in that window, you can also enter any adjustments that you find on your statements that were not in the transaction set already in that window. So if you've got bank charges, interest charges, standing orders, recurring payments, those kind of things, you can enter those on the fly in that window as well and code them to your general ledger. And when you commit your bank reconciliation, when you're happy with it and you actually press the reconcile button, which is also in that window, those transactions will post through to your general ledger as well, completing both the bank rec and your GL accounting. In Business Central specifically, there are also some pre-reports that you can run, some test bank reconciliation reports that you can run to confirm that the report is giving you the numbers that you want for your bank rec and that everything balances before you commit it. But in general, those I think are the simple best practices. Every application has a bank rec function. It should be used. There's no need to be downloading to Excel and manually performing your bank rec offline. And there are some huge benefits to be gained from getting that electronic format from the bank, which is a lot easier than it used to be, and letting the system do as much of the matching as it can do for you.
Very good. Just a quick question, Grantley. How many customers would you say today are currently doing bank reconciliation or utilizing that functionality?
I think based on what I know, the majority of them are using it. There are very few customers that still download to Excel and do the reconciliation offline because that's just not very efficient. The ones that do it offline do it because a portion of their banking transactions aren't going through their ERP application. They're not going through their banking module. So depending on the kind of business that they are, if they have a lot of transactions going through their bank that are not triggered by traditional receivables, traditional payables, then there are a number of transactions that maybe hit their bank account long before they hit their ERP system. Certainly with some of the financial institutions that we work with, they have a lot of transactions that are not traditional subledger generated transactions, and they are more likely to take the bank reconciliation offline because of that. But most of our traditional distribution manufacturing customers are doing all of their business through their ERP application, and they're doing their reconciliations live in their ERP systems, and in most cases over the last 5 to 10 years have transitioned to some form of electronic reconciliation, as well as the banks have made those formats more accessible and less costly to get their hands on.
Thank you. Just another question to that. Might there be any particular formatting requirements from the banks to facilitate this process?
It really varies from bank to bank. They have different kinds of format accessible to you depending on what kind of account you have. So some banks have just a straight CSV download or something similar to that. Some banks have a very specific layout. Most of them can get you something in text file format or CSV format, which is sufficient for mapping into any of the electronic banking tools that we have.
Excellent, thank you. Next question for our panelists. Let's see, what are some of the reporting options for custom reporting? I think there might be a few panelists who can respond to this. See Grantley jumping up and down in your chair, so maybe you'd like to start first.
Okay, so again, we deal with multiple ERP applications, 3 different Microsoft ones plus a SysPro application, and all of them have reporting options built into them. There are some more generic reporting tools that are more readily accessible and are not specific to any one application. So Microsoft has its SQL reporting services tool, which is deployed in most of their existing applications, but is actually a generic report writer in that it will report off of any SQL data-based application or SQL data-based data set. So SQL reporting services is a common tool for writing flat reports. If you want something a little more dynamic, then as a Microsoft shop, we would be heavily promoting Power BI, part of the Power Tools stack from Microsoft, and Power BI has a number of different connectors to a number of different applications out of the box, and I'll probably let Josh talk a little bit more about that because I can't remember the list, but I think it covers everything from DB2 to flat file with SQL along the way. So Power BI, if you're looking for something a little more dynamic, a little more graphical, a little more analytical, is also a very good generic tool. It comes with, and again, I'll let Josh correct me on this, it comes with most of the version of business Microsoft Office licensing, so you probably have it available to you already, and it's not specific to Microsoft ERP applications or even to ERP applications. It can consume many different data sources, CRM systems, spreadsheets, flat files, and allow you to do a lot of business intelligence reporting in a common platform, which if the underlying data set were to change in the future, all of the time that you'd invested in building those dashboards and building those reports wouldn't necessarily be out the window. You'd be able to reattach them to the new data source and they would continue to function in the same way. Josh, I don't know if you want to give some color to that.
Yeah, so with Power BI, the one area to consider, there's two license levels for it, and that you want to make sure that if you're doing this sort of shared workspaces, you need Power BI Pro. And then the other piece to mention is when you're trying to pull data from an on-prem system, like you're running an on-prem GP or SysPro, any on-prem SQL or relational database that you really want to report on, there's it's called the on-premises data gateway that you have to install on your server to pull that data out. But then you can report on it right in Power BI. And then the other one that Grantley didn't mention was specifically for SysPro. There's a reporting tool called SysPro Reporting Services, which is basically a Crystal Reports engine that uses the SysPro reporting business objects. Again, that allows you to create custom forms and reports right in the SysPro runtime.
Excellent. Thanks, Josh. Does anyone else, any of the other panelists want to add to that? We're good. Okay, next question. What are some of the, what does it mean to move to the cloud? This is a big question, I think, for a lot of people.
We can fight to answer this one.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty broad question, right? So I think we'll start with Josh, of course, being our IT guru. He has some technical insights to share. Did a little bit of preparation before the discussion, but I think some of our other panelists will also have some additional perspectives to add as well. So I'll hand this off to you, Josh.
Sure, thank you. Thanks, Bill. So moving to the cloud is a really, really wide, broad question, but there are a couple ways of approaching it, right? There's the idea of lift and shift, which is taking your on-prem virtual machines, your on-prem servers, and just moving them to a cloud host, moving them to Azure. That's one option. The other options are to kind of shift and actually adopt cloud services like Office 365, Exchange Online, Business Central, things like that. There's definitely, it's a big culture change for companies that are used to running full on-prem and on-premises environments and want to move to the cloud. You're shifting your money, your budget from a CapEx model into an operational model because you're paying monthly for these services. And it's a big change for your IT staff because they're no longer fully concerned about running all of the hardware, all of the infrastructure that supports it, so they can really concentrate on tasks that bring value to the business. Exchange, for example, Exchange Online. Exchange has been around for a long, long time, and it needs a lot of proper care and feeding and maintenance and patching and backups and all of that. But if you're in the cloud, you're really just consuming the service and hosting. You're in control of your users and mail flow and things like that. But you don't have to worry about backups or hardware or disk space, mailbox sizes, all of the low-level things that just take a lot of time. So this slide here kind of illustrates the various levels of cloud hosting that are available. On the left, we have on-premises, on-premises, which is the, you would be responsible as the host. You'd be responsible for everything from the power and cooling all the way up through the physical networking and hardware, all the way up to the applications. If you move to an infrastructure as a service model, which would be moving virtual machines into the cloud, the boxes that are in the I guess kind of greenish color would be managed by the hosting provider. In our case, Microsoft Azure, and then you as the consumer, or us as the partner, we would be responsible for everything from the OS level up. Some examples of infrastructure as a service would really just be like moving virtual machines, moving on-prem servers, converting them into cloud infrastructure VMs. Very similar to running them on-prem. You're just not managing the hardware anymore. The next level, which is platform as a service, gives you platform options that you can consume. So things like Azure SQL Server, which is great for reporting, for building a data warehouse. Azure Storage, which would be very helpful for dealing with files, file shares, and whatnot. And you're basically consuming the platform. So you're in charge of the data and the application level at that point. And then to go full cloud, you get into the software as a service model. Software as a service is, you pay a monthly fee for your user license, and you consume the software, you can configure it, you can use it, but you don't have to worry about any of the lower level administration. So some examples of SaaS services would be like, Office 365, Dropbox, Dynamics CRM, Business Central, Finance and Operations, etc. Yeah.
We got another slide there. Does anybody else want to add to that discussion?
I think Josh did an awesome job, and I really don't have any more technical expertise to add to that.
Yeah, just wondering what, go ahead, sorry. Just wondering what a vision for process of transitioning to the cloud, how that might unfold. Does anybody have any insight on that?
Typically, it starts with an inventory and kind of gathering of what you have today and where you want to be, and just trying to figure out what the best transition plan is. In my opinion, moving to the infrastructure as a service, doing that lift and shift and moving your service to the cloud is probably the lowest level of moving to cloud hosting. and you really don't change at that point. You're not changing your processes, you're not adapting your systems, you're not adopting any new, really new technologies, right? When you get into things like the platform as a service or software as a service and some of the higher tier systems that you can get into, that's when you really start to adapt and see the benefit of moving to the cloud.
Excellent.
Josh, I was just going to ask you, we have a fair amount of experience in doing this under different scenarios. We've done the on-premise full-blown lift and shift approach. We've obviously got software applications that are entirely SaaS-based. Is there a different level of complexity and a different sort of time frame depending on the type of move that you're doing? Is there anything specific to any one of those?
Well, I mean, every single project for moving to the cloud would be unique because it depends on the end state and the service you're moving to, right? So if you're moving, you're moving servers to the cloud, the time frame for that would be a little lower because you're not really there's no real change adoption. You're just moving where you're hosting your servers. If you're moving into a SaaS-based product, you're going to adopt Office 365 and Teams and SharePoint Online and all that. There's the technical process for moving the data from your on-prem host, and then there's also the user adoption, the training, the changes that come along with it. So that's typically a bigger project.
Any gotchas specifically in and around things like integrations with other applications? Where those applications aren't necessarily moving to the cloud? Does moving part of a solution to the cloud make it more or less complicated?
The big challenge with that, if you've got a customer that has some stuff in the cloud and some stuff not, is connectivity. You've got to make sure you have some secure way of communicating between those environments. So with, for example, you have some VMs sitting on an Azure host, and you want to consume some data from an on-prem environment or another partner or something like that. You need to have some way of doing that. And we've done it with cloud tools like Azure Data Factory. We've done it using things like Azure Storage to just move, text files around. There are definitely some gotchas, but there are solutions to pretty well all of them.
Hey, Josh, question for you. And this sort of, I think, revolves around some of the more common things that come up often for people who are not familiar with the cloud, but how do you envision security needs? And also, how would a company know if they have enough bandwidth to support a new or existing app?
So as far as the bandwidth requirements go, it really, again, it totally depends on what the application is. Microsoft has some really good guidelines out there as far as what network requirements they have, what latency, what bandwidth, how much travel time, what sort of strategies you can do to optimize that. Microsoft does a really, really good job they do this thing called geographic DNS. So if you're logging into office.com and you're in Canada, then they're going to route your office.com traffic to the nearest Microsoft data center in, Toronto or Quebec City. If you're overseas, even though your mailbox might be in Canada, they're going to route you to the nearest data center and route it over their network internally. So they do a really, really good job at that. And that goes for pretty well any of their cloud services that they do that with. As far as security goes within the Microsoft 365 cloud and Azure, I always encourage people to check out the Microsoft Trust Center. That outlines what Microsoft does to ensure your data security, who gets access to what and when, where the data resides, where it's stored at rest, encryption, all of that really good stuff. At a higher level, within your tenant, whenever you start adopting cloud services, we've done this for everybody in ours, and I'm encouraging all of our customers to do it, which is roll out multi-factor authentication. So every single user in the SHEA Office 365 tenant gets prompted on their phone when they go to log into an Office 365 service as a second factor to make sure they are who they are. Microsoft has some really cool features with conditional access. So you can do things like, you know what, I'm not letting people log into SharePoint unless they're in my office. So you can do a conditional access policy that says, you're not in the office, you can't log into SharePoint. Or things like, I'm going to block certain countries from logging into my tenant. Those are features that are built into conditional access policies that are available to you with the appropriate license.
Excellent. I think we have a few more questions, but we might need to save them for the next event. Just to give you some heads up here. The question related to having a single provider for managing network security and voice services. I think voice services often gets overlooked during the cloud transition, and which stakeholders might be relevant to include as part of the cloud engagement initiative. So we'll hold on to those questions till next week. Right now we're at 11:58, so just want to make sure that we respect the time to this event. Thank you, presenters. We'll now go ahead and take some questions if we can. Just a reminder, please be sure to submit any future questions through the panel on your GoToWebinar. It looks like we've covered pretty much all of the questions for now. Marina is telling me that we have no further questions. So panelists, is there anything else that you'd like to add just before we wrap up?
I was just going to remind you, Bill, that we're also accepting questions through the landing page on the website. So if people want to get their questions in after this is over and the panel's shut down, we're taking submissions through the website for next week already.
Absolutely, yes. That was on the next slide, actually.
Oh,
so,
sorry.
Yes, so no worries. Great. Thanks for everyone who submitted your questions to Quiz the WIz for today. And thank you for the panelists for doing such a great job with your responses. As again, note to the attendees, this will be a weekly event. So if you have any questions, whether they be simple or complex, it doesn't really matter to us. We'd like to take all the questions and would like to give our panelists an opportunity to discuss them in the future. Please send them to us at info@sheaglobal.com, and we'll be happy to include them in future discussions. Also, if you'd like to learn more about any of the content we've discussed today, or if you'd like some support from SHEA on implementing anything that you may have heard today, please feel free to reach out to us via email or simply call us direct at the number displayed. We want to thank you for joining us today. Stay tuned for our next Quiz the WIz, which will be Tuesday, April the 14th. In the meanwhile, watch your email box for a link to the on-demand version of today's event, which should be sent out within the next few days. And we will see you all at the next event. Have a great week.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you.